Now to FBI Director Cash Patel, who has fired at least 6 agents tied to the 2022 search of President Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate. That's what 6 people familiar with the matter tell NBC News. But 3 of those sources say at least 10 employees were ultimately dismissed. As you may recall, the FBI search was connected to the federal investigation into President Trump's handling of classified documents after he left the White House in 2021. He had pleaded not guilty and denied any wrongdoing. That case was ultimately dismissed by a judge who was appointed by President Trump.
Something extraordinary is happening inside the FBI right now. And if the leaks coming out of Washington are accurate, it means Donald Trump may be facing a problem he never expected. Not Democrats, not the media, but the very law enforcement agency he once tried to control. Because according to multiple reports, FBI agents, some of them quietly, some of them openly, are starting to push back. Leaks are pouring out. Whistleblowers are stepping forward. Congress is suddenly receiving new information. And behind the scenes, investigators who once stayed silent are now speaking out about what they say has been happening inside the Bureau. The result? A political firestorm that is growing bigger by the day. Because the story now isn't just about Trump. It's about the FBI itself, an agency suddenly engulfed in internal chaos. Agents being fired, whistleblowers contacting Congress, investigations being reopened. And some insiders say what we're seeing right now is essentially a revolt inside the Bureau. A quiet rebellion from agents who believe the agency has been pushed too far. And if that's true, it means Trump may have just been stabbed in the back by his own FBI. So what exactly is going on? And why are agents suddenly leaking information that could create massive political damage?
Monica, walk us through what we've learned about these employees who were fired, and has there been any response from the White House or the FBI at this point?
Yeah, you mentioned that there were those agents we know were dismissed, about 6 of them, but in total, we're told that these were 10 employees who worked for the FBI. So that ranges to actual agents, to support personnel, and even including supervisors. And the FBI itself has not commented on this beyond a statement from the FBI director himself, Cash Patel, who is speaking out about a matter that appears to be connected to this overall, which we're going to get to in a moment. But the White House isn't weighing in either. The only statement that we're seeing is from the FBI Agents Association that is expressing its dismay with the fact that these people now have been removed from their posts. Apparently, they say, in coordination with this investigation they were a part of, they write in this statement that they condemn the unlawful termination of FBI special agents, which, like other firings by Director Patel, violates the due process rights of those who risk their lives to protect our country. And the reference there to these other investigations is the idea that agents who were also involved in looking into people who rioted on January 6th have also been removed and fired, in addition to other agents who were involved in investigations that were looking into then candidate Donald Trump before he won the White House for a second.
That announcement alone sent shockwaves through Washington, because those agents weren't random employees. They were connected to one of the most controversial investigations involving Trump, the FBI search of Mar-a-Lago back in 2022. That investigation centered on classified documents that Trump allegedly kept after leaving the White House. Trump denied wrongdoing. He pleaded not guilty. And eventually the case was dismissed by a judge who had been appointed during his presidency. But now, years later, the agents involved in that investigation are suddenly being fired. And according to multiple sources inside the Bureau, it might not stop at 6. Some reports say the number could be closer to 10 employees removed from their posts. Agents, support staff, even supervisors. And that's where the situation inside the FBI started to get extremely tense. Because when agents who worked on a politically sensitive investigation suddenly start getting fired, other employees inside the agency begin asking questions. Is this routine restructuring, or is it retaliation? And that's where the story takes an even darker turn. Because according to several insiders, these firings may be part of a much larger effort happening inside the Bureau. Over the past year, dozens of employees have reportedly been pushed out, many of them connected to investigations involving Trump, others described as not being politically aligned with the current leadership. Inside Washington, critics are calling it a purge. Supporters say it's simply restructuring the agency. But either way, the consequences inside the FBI have been dramatic. experienced agents leaving, senior officials stepping down, institutional knowledge disappearing. And now, according to some insiders, agents who remain inside the Bureau are becoming increasingly frustrated because the mission of the FBI, terrorism, espionage, cybercrime, is suddenly being overshadowed by political conflict. That statement from the FBI Agents Association was unusually blunt. Organizations representing federal agents rarely step into political battles. But this time they did, and the message was clear. They believe the firings may have violated due process protections, and they argue the agents involved had risked their lives serving the country. When a group representing law enforcement officers starts publicly criticizing leadership, it's usually a sign that tensions inside the agency have reached a breaking point. And according to whistleblowers now contacting Congress, that breaking point may have already been crossed. That's where this story suddenly becomes explosive, because whistleblowers inside the FBI are now reportedly providing information to members of Congress. Information about investigations, about internal decisions, about evidence connected to major political scandals. Some of those allegations involve the handling of the Epstein files. Others involve accusations that evidence related to Trump may have been removed or altered inside government databases. Now, it's important to note, many of these claims are still being investigated. But the fact that FBI insiders are bringing them forward at all tells you something important. It means the internal conflict inside the Bureau is no longer private. It's spilling into public view. And once that happens, it becomes very difficult to contain. Another controversy fueling the conflict involves FBI resources. According to whistleblower reports, Bureau aircraft were allegedly used for personal travel by leadership. At one point, investigators responding to a mass shooting were reportedly delayed because a plane and pilot were unavailable. Why? Because the aircraft was being used elsewhere. Critics say that kind of decision undermines the credibility of the entire agency, especially when agents on the ground are trying to respond to serious national security threats. And those kinds of stories, once they leak, tend to spread fast, because they reinforce a narrative many FBI agents deeply resent. That political leadership is damaging the institution they spent their careers serving. Now imagine what that environment feels like inside the Bureau right now. Agents watching colleagues get fired, whistleblowers talking to Congress, leadership facing accusations of misusing resources. And at the center of all of it, Donald Trump. Because Trump appointed many of the officials now running the agency, and critics argue the leadership changes were designed to create loyalty inside the FBI. But what may have happened instead is the exact opposite. Instead of loyalty, insiders say the pressure has triggered resistance, agents leaking information, former officials speaking publicly, and lawmakers launching investigations. What makes this situation even more volatile is the timing, because the political stakes right now are enormous. Congress is already investigating several issues connected to Trump. The Justice Department remains under intense scrutiny, and the upcoming election cycle means every new scandal instantly becomes political ammunition. So when FBI whistleblowers start providing new information, it doesn't just stay inside Washington. It explodes across the national political landscape. Headlines, cable news debates, congressional hearings, and the cycle feeds itself. Each new leak creates more pressure, more investigations, more questions. And that brings us to where things stand right now. Inside the FBI, tensions appear to be at one of the highest levels the Bureau has experienced in years. Agents are being fired, whistleblowers are contacting Congress, former officials are speaking publicly, and new allegations continue to surface almost every week. For Donald Trump, that creates a dangerous situation, because political opponents are already using these leaks to argue that his influence inside federal agencies has created chaos. At the same time, Trump supporters say the leaks prove something very different. They argue the FBI has long been hostile toward him, and that internal resistance is part of a broader political fight. Whichever side you believe, one thing is clear. The conflict inside the FBI is no longer hidden. It's playing out in public, and every new whistleblower, every leaked document, every headline adds another layer to a story that is becoming bigger and more complicated by the day. Because when an intelligence agency like the FBI becomes engulfed in political warfare, the consequences rarely stay contained. And if the leaks keep coming the way they have been, this fight between Trump and the Bureau may only be getting started.